Alright, so this video is going to be about the sensor kits that I am selling. They're kind of a DIY kit. As you can see, I've got a bunch of them and I'm going to explain how to build them in this video. So this is what you get inside one envelope, which is what I'm going to be selling, just one kit per envelope. There will be two 3D printed plastic spacers, 4 pieces of conductive copper tape, 4 pieces of Velostat, and 4 pieces of wire, all cut to size so that it's easy to build. There will be 2 different spacer designs, which I will ship out at random for science. They both work perfectly fine. The first step is to sand down the little plastic spacers. One of the sides, which is the top side of the print, will be a little bit rough, and just sand it down a teeny bit to make sure that there's no weird pieces of plastic sticking off on either side. It's not really mandatory, but just to be safe, make sure there's nothing that's going to cut through any of the layers. Next, make sure your work surface is really clean. Any little bits of dirt will kind of mess up your sensor by putting dents in it, and you don't want that. You want it to be as smooth as possible. Now we want to strip the 4 pieces of wire just on one end, and then we're going to solder them onto the foil tape. Soldering them on before we stick the tape to anything else will prevent us from melting the Velostat or the plastic, and will also give us a nice solid edge that's easier to peel off the backing. Here you can see me soldering the wires to the copper strips. You can see I'm doing these sort of opposite corners so that when I sandwich the strips together, all of the wires can meet up in the middle. Depending on where you need your wires to go and how you want to route them, you can actually solder anywhere on this foil and it'll all be fine as long as the wire is connected to the foil. Now we are going to get to the actual assembly. This part takes a little bit of finesse and you have to be really careful because you don't want to get any wrinkles or any bubbles, so just do it how I do it and it'll all work out okay. First, we're going to peel back about 1/2 inch of the backing lengthwise, just that 1/2 inch, and then fold it back. Then take a sheet of Velostat and, without getting it stuck to the copper foil, hold it in place against the backing so it's not sticking and line it up so that it's equidistant from your 3 edges. If you get it with just that teeny bit where it's even on the sides, you can see how far it needs to be on top, and then it should be even on all 3 sides. And then starting from the center, you can rub your fingers outwards to make sure there's no bubbles and it's stuck nice and smoothly to the copper tape. Now you can see I'm wiping down my surface and trying to repair it because there was a piece of the wire shielding that I left there because I didn't clean my surface properly. Next, I'm going to lift up the backing just a teeny bit and start working my fingers under it, bit by bit, and getting the Velostat applied to the copper tape nice and flat. And I just work my fingers slightly more in each time, always working from the middle outward in nice smooth strokes. And this way you won't get any bubbles. When you get to the end, the copper tape will want to curl a little when it lets go of the paper. That's fine, it happens all the time. You can just curl it back manually by hand when you're done peeling it off, as you can see me doing here. And now I've got this thing stuck with no bubbles, and the whole thing itself is slightly curly, but that is totally fine. So now you can see me placing the plastic on top of this sheet of copper, and you want it to line up so that there is no copper showing on the inside open holes of the plastic. The black Velostat should be big enough to hit all of the edges of the plastic. And I'm actually doing this the hard way. It is way easier to put the plastic down and then stick the copper on top of it and just get it even from all the edges and you should be fine. And you'll see when I do all of the other ones, I do it that way and it's much easier. But anyway, there is me doing one. So now I've got the second side made, and you can see here I am sticking the second side to the opposite side. And you can see the wires both line up in the same corner, nice and neat, because I soldered them on where I wanted it. And here I'm putting the copper on top of the plastic, which is much easier to line up, and you can move it around a little because it's not that sticky, only the edges are sticky. And then once I get it where I want, I just rub my fingers along the edges and get it on nice and smooth, and there is one sensor done. So here's the two completed sensors. You're going to want to mix one wire from each sensor to be your middle wire, and then one other wire from each sensor to go to the other two wires, and then you can share a ground. You can also, if you want to reuse these wires, you can take the backing and put them on top of the sensors under your grip tape, and that way the grip tape won't stick to your sensors and ruin them when you remove it. But I've had mixed luck with this method with them working, so I just destroy the sensors and put them straight on. Finally, as you can see, here is the sensors on my board. I've been using them for a while and I haven't had any issues. They work totally great. Alright, well that's all there is. At this point you can stop watching. I'm just going to leave you with some real-time footage of me assembling a second sensor. And I'm also just going to ramble about whatever I feel like rambling about. So one thing I forgot to talk about was testing these sensors with the Hall sensor. Not a Hall sensor. See, normally I would just re-record this clip, but I have like 5 minutes of footage of me assembling this second sensor, so I'm just gonna run with it. No Hall sensors. Normally I forgot to film me testing with a multimeter. So you can put these on resistance mode or even just continuity mode and check your two wires and it should be open. And then when you put your weight on the sensor, it should be closed. You might have a really high resistance value even when there's no weight on it. But I found my OneWheel V1 with a resistance value of about 3,000 or lower. That's when it turns on, and my Plus turns on at about 2,000 or lower. And I haven't tested an XR, and I don't even know what the pint has for a sensor. But anyway, you might have like 2 million ohms resistance when it's connected, but that has worked totally fine for me. I haven't had any issues, but definitely test yours with a multimeter before you waste a piece of grip tape and go through all the work of soldering and assembling everything. So that's just a lesson learned from me. I will also put links in the description for the connector plug. It's like a Switchcraft part. I'll just link that. And I'll of course put a link to my website where you can buy the few kits I have. I made like 6 of them, but I think I'm gonna give 2 to whatever. I'm not gonna name any names, but anyway, I'll put them up for sale, and then maybe I'll make more. Maybe I won't. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I don't want to charge too much for these, uh, but I just want to get them out to the community so people can play with making their own sensors and maybe learn something. It's all the information I put in this video should be more than enough for you to figure out how to do this on your own without buying the parts from me, but the kits I made, they're pre-sized and easier to put together. I have tons of Velostats, so maybe I'll make more, but the money versus the time just doesn't feel that worth it. Also, some of you are probably wondering about putting these on double concave surfaces. I've had mixed results. I made a sensor. It seemed to work okay for me, but June has been testing it, and he says it gets stuck on his board sometimes, so when he takes his foot off, it doesn't turn off for a second or two. But it worked fine for me. I would just avoid putting them on the most curvy parts of the pad, maybe put them on a little bit of a mellower double concave part, but again, you can test what you want. The reason I made that extra gritty sensor versus the more open sensor was I wanted to see if the extra grid made it a little bit work a little bit better on double concave, because the splitter would hopefully prevent it from the curve of the board forcing the pieces together. But I didn't see any difference, and they both worked fine for me, and they both were slightly sticky on June's board, so I don't really know what that was. But I think it was pretty usable regardless. So I don't know. You know, you could just see how you feel about it. Anyway, I think I'm out of things to ramble about. So I think there's only about 30 seconds left to this video anyway. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I definitely have nothing else to say. Oh, and I'm watching Doug DeMuro. You guys probably see that if you like Doug DeMuro. It's just I put on some noise while I work, so I'm not doing anything. I guess I could use music, but I kind of like videos. Alright, peace out all you mad scientists.